My name is Jerry. I left MAGA, and I'm here to spill all the tea. Today, I want to, or at least in this video, I want to talk about some of the things that I saw that came out of where I grew up in the Assembly of God Church. A while back, I was trying to help a young man. I had befriended him online, but as things got to a certain point, it was obvious that his emotional immaturity was just something I wasn't going to be able to overcome. And he just wasn't patient enough to deal with it. One reason being he was pushing 40 and was single. He'd had a couple of serious relationships that ended horribly. He, like myself, had grown up in the Assemblies of God Church, and he fully believed that God would bring him a wife. Kind of like in that movie. Well, I can't remember exactly which one it was. It's probably been in a couple of different ones, but military movies where a Marine is told if the Marine Corps wanted you to have a wife, they'd issue you one. And over there in the Assemblies of God Church and in that charismatic Pentecostal environment, it's that way. They think that they tend to teach that God has predetermined your life for you. That you're gonna have a wife, you're gonna have all these kids, and it's all gonna be for the glory of God, and it's gonna be a gift from Him to you. I know another young man who grew up under a similar teaching, but not in the Assembly's denomination. It comes out of purity culture, where one's value is based upon their virginity as a child going into marriage, because a girl and a guy are supposed to be virgins when they get married, and there's really no sex education provided. There's no understanding because through purity culture, I everything that my body was going through in puberty and through those teenage years was what some things feel good, and I was told those were a sin. But see, here's the catch. We believe that there were different grades of sins. So masturbation was less of a sin than premarital sex. And either one could be forgiven. In fact, uh, I'll have to do another video about some of the things they think can be restored through prayer. One of them, anyway, I'm not even going to go there right now. I'm just kind of rambling on this one. It frustrates me that when people, I, it's due to a lack of rational thinking on some people's part, and I can't fully fault them because when you're brought into a high demand religion at an early age, or even born into it, the indoctrination is ingrained from the beginning. So if you're taught from a very early age that there is this God that's going to give you a wife, and you don't hear anything contradictory to that because you're not allowed to ask questions, then it's it's near impossible unless you can get a conversation opened up, which I've been able to with a few people by just making it more of a personal conversation, individualistic. That's how I came up with the title of one of the two books that I'm trying to work on right now. It was teased in my testimonial on the leavingmaga.org page. I'll leave the link to that, to the org, and to the YouTube channel, all in the description. But I hope you go check them out. But within purity culture, um, there's this weird dynamic of pledging one's virginity for later. Delaying any sort of sexual gratification. Denying self is what it is. That's what it boils down to. Everything that an authoritarian or high demand group does is to break you down and make you a component of the greater body. And within authoritarian Christianity, Christian dominionism, Christian nationalism, the charismania, the Pentecostals, the evangelicals, charismatic evangelicals, charismatic Pentecostals, Pentecostal evangelicals, and then there's the full gospel. They're where the three circles intersect, right there in the middle of the Venn diagram. But they all have their own variations. It's just like the most extreme of the three are the ones that wind up in the middle. And that's how we get a couple of cats like King Copeland and Hank Kuhneman. And I plan on doing videos on both of those guys right after I post this one. There's a lot of manipulation that's managed through fear. The book that I'm going to write about my own deconstruction, I'm going to be addressing the different doctrines that I had to untangle. And the very first and foremost chapter is going to be on the rapture. That's where it all starts. Because if you're afraid to miss the rapture and you're not afraid to die, then extremes can be achieved by leadership of their followers who believe like that. So yeah, where I grew up in the Assembly of God Church, we believed it was possible to have a hidden sin that you had not asked for forgiveness for, and because of that, you could miss the rapture. You might accidentally sin. High school boy, football season or any athletic season, day of a home game, cheerleaders are at school. Anyway, it's biology. But when you weaponize a book against biology, against one's self, because if you're teaching that masturbation is a sin and must be avoided or you're going to go to hell and burn in an eternal fire forever and ever and ever and ever and no relief ever, and you're just gonzo, and it's just going to be, it's really horrible. It creates a lot of fear, and that fear can be used to manipulate people into believing that the Antichrist is here and we've got to do this, that, or the other, or we've got to go and fight these demonically possessed armies, or these armies of Satan, blue helmets like the United Nations or the Russians or the Chinese, or insert enemy here. They are evil and must be destroyed in the name of our God. That creates a holy war. So it doesn't matter. Transgender people, immigrants, people with body counts, men and women with body counts. And that again goes back to the purity culture, because if one doesn't have the information to even practice safe sex, much less pleasurable sex, things can be challenging. Pardon me. And by challenging, I mean, there's this thing about that the nerds at University of Missouri Rolla, we used to share it. It was called dimensional physics. Imagine trying to stick a carrot in a Coke bottle. There are a lot of women that I've heard say in their testimonies that the first time they had sex was neither pleasurable nor satisfactory. They had no idea what they were doing. And in many cases, it was just outright painful. because the guy didn't know what he was doing because he had no education. Um, and then not all men are the same size. Not all women have the same capacity. And this leads to issues. Um, the within purity culture and within the and that Assembly of God environment, that whole gaggle over there, and I'll explain more about the New Apostolic Reformation. I'm going to start getting into that with Hank Kuhneman and Ken Copeland. But yeah, on gap fillers. Within purity culture, that physical purity, that not wanting to be chewed gum or a licked cupcake. I've heard gals talk about those analogies having been used, which is horrible, horrible. But when you have that sort of mindset, and or there's this inferiority complex that develops around the idea that the prospective partner or potential partner would have enough experience that they would not be able to be satisfied. And apparently that's demonic. I don't know. It's not biblical. I don't know. It's still all about denial of self and then claiming victimhood later without understanding that it's all part of the programming that they've been through. And it took me a lot of work to untangle a lot of all that and so much more. But yeah, purity culture is going to be a separate. In fact, purity culture will probably be chapter 2 in my deconstruction biography. Rapture being chapter 1. It's all about fear and control and manipulation. If I have time today, oh no, I already did a video on Greg Locke and addressed his interaction with the red heifers. So what I need to do then after I do Hank Kuhneman and Ken Copeland is go ahead and address some of the end days prophecies as I was taught them in the 70s and how I've seen them evolve in the last 50 years. Uh, and that's what I guess I'm going to do. Anyway, yeah, if you're waiting for God to give you a wife, I'm just going to tell you it's going to be as successful as God showing up with a plate of food. They may send somebody, but it is possible that you might need to interact with other people to find that somebody you're supposed to be with or that you feel you're supposed to be with. I've lived a wild life. I'll put it that way. I am no saint, but I'm not the devil either because I can still feel the pain. But yeah, I just quoted Five Finger Death Punch. But I have an amazing partner now. I have an amazing life, and it's because I left MAGA and I gave up the hate. And I can rest now. I'm able to sleep because, I mean, genuinely sleep because I'm not stressing myself out by maintaining this rage that will it'll burn a person out. It will. And it's because they've been, many of them, most of them, especially the diehard ones, have been manipulated since birth. So I'm going to try to work in some more psychology information as we move forward. The leadership, and the spiritual warfare front of the MAGA movement are they're delusional, they're narcissistic, and if yeah, just keep following me. I'll introduce you to these characters. You'll figure out who they are, and then I'm gonna start putting them together. Because like with Greg Locke, I needed to introduce you to him, and this Hank Kuhneman piece, I need to introduce you to him because then that way after Ken Copeland and then Shane Vaughn, and then I can put all those guys together in another video when I'm talking about Flashpoint Media. As I'm working through this, I'm going to try to bring in some of the other doctrines so that you can understand better. I'm going to try to simplify or decode or translate. I prefer translate the coded language that's used in the cult into plain English as best as I can. Um, and that I should be able to do that pretty easily. And in studying various cults, I figured out how to decode Scientology or translate Scientology because of the work of Doug Scott Kramer, God rest his soul, if there is a God. But anyway, Doug Scott Kramer died in December of 2023. Um, I'll do a video on him another time. Anyway, I rambled long enough on this video. So I guess we can consider this a channel update. Moving forward on in part, some doctrine and introduction. I can get deeper into those things. I will get deeper into those things because, like with purity culture, Speaker Mike Johnson took his daughter to a purity ball, and she got engaged to her dad, and it's just weird. I'll get into it. And if you don't know Mike Johnson, he's got that Covenant Eyes deal with his son where they monitor each other's pornography intake. These cats are weird. All right. I'm going to try to get some more production handled pretty quick here. I hope you all have a great day. Thanks for taking the time to listen to the end. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Please do that whole subscribe, share thing. Definitely feel free to share my information. I hope it can help other people. I'm just trying to get information out there as to what I knew and what I know and how I got from point A to point B, in hopes that maybe it might be able to help others. So yeah, again, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, get plenty of rest and plenty of fluids.